Joshing. My name is Joshua Pentolaresco. I write stuff and I podcast too. And today, well, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm a little nervous today. It's not very often you get to meet somebody that you've admired. Like, don't get me wrong. Everybody I have interviewed on this podcast has been incredible. They're talented, they're brilliant people, but there is something to be said about reading somebody you grew up reading. I didn't discover Rob Sawyer right away. I didn't discover him until my late teens or maybe my college years. The first thing I remember reading came when I actually went on a trip to BC with my dad. A friend of his gave me a copy of one of his books called The Terminal Experiment. And I read it, and this was single-handedly one of the most engaging science fiction books I've read in quite a long time. Rob is, to me anyway, he is the closest thing to Isaac Asimov you can have today. I've said it to him in person. He loves the compliment, but it's deserved. He has this ability to do what Asimov did in that he will look at a situation, whatever it might be, and he'll analyze it not just from the scientific point of view, but he looks at very much at the down-to-earth, practical, everyday matters. And he does this a number of different ways. The settings he does are usually somewhere based in Canada. He describes the areas very well. I imagine this is due to his travels. He deals with people. He deals with some real issues. Terminal Experiment dealt with the whole concept of cheating, and the idea of, without giving too much away, Rob talks about consciousness in the Terminal Experiment, and in that the main character puts himself in creates three different computer programs himself. One of them is how do I say this again without actually sounding like a complete dork here? One of them has no concept of the body, the physical need anymore. One is still very much like him, very human. And I can't remember off the top of my head what the third one was. Maybe it was just him. And just two copies, one with, one without. And it just dealt with how consciousness, like if you don't have the physical consequences or physical limitations, what you could do. And he applied this to some really real backdrops like adultery, cheating, overcoming those emotions, and where, how different consequences, different situations create different decisions. I'm not going to spoil the book for anyone that has not read it, but this really grabbed me as a kid, and I started reading other stuff. Like I said, Terminal Experiment really grabbed me. He's got a few other ones that were really good. Illegal Alien was really, really well done, and I think outside of his books on consciousness is my favorite one of the bunch. But again, it all have the same kind of thing where he will take a concept, an idea, and he will just put it in a very, very real, very tangible thing that you and I could see today and not even flinch. And Asimov did that very well too. He conveyed, Asimov conveyed to the audience very easily, no matter what it was, whether it was high concept science or whether it was just a moral dilemma with his robots or foundation or whatever it was. He could show it to you in a way that would apply and something you could feel and understand, no questions asked. Sawyer does the same thing with all his books, all his short stories, his essays. He makes sure there's a very human touch in his work, and so I really, really admired him, and I got a chance to actually meet him in person at When Words Collide last year. I've met him a couple times since. Always very cordial to me. Like I said, I'm not going to pretend we're friends or anything like that, but he was willing to go out of his way to let me be interviewed him. In fact, I'll say this right now, I was scared as hell. Partly because of what I just came from. I just did an agent proposal, and I literally, just coming down for that fear of pitching my idea to the agent, this is Rob comes up to me. We had made an arrangement for a time. He goes, "Can we just do the interview now?" Then this Rob to me, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So my fear just went right back up because he's somebody I can respect very much for what he does in the craft, and he literally is one of the best at it. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's won multiple Hugo and Nebula awards. He's definitely somebody, any science fiction author, actually any author, period, would want to aspire to. Like I said, he's very much, he has his own way um, of communicating a very human terms in science fiction, and in my opinion, that's what science fiction is supposed to be. High concepts are great, and cool. I love ideas. I have big ideas in my own work. But if one thing I've learned in the last few years is that if my own writing does not have a human element to it, something people can grab to, no matter how good the idea is, it's just an idea, and you can't grasp an idea on its own. But he had something really personal, something that people can grab to and just grab hold of. You have a good story. Something, then doesn't matter what it is. You can write a story about a jar of dirt, as far as I'm concerned. But how do you humanize the jar of dirt? How do you make it so people can understand whatever the plight might be? And yes, I have written a story about a jar of dirt. It just did it on a whim, just to see if I could. I did. It's not really that good, but I had fun with it. That's really all that matters. That's beside the point. I actually want to bring something else up about Rob before I actually get to the interview. My favorite book by him, outside the Terminal Experiment, is Calculating God. It was an important one for me, for a lot of different reasons, and the lesson didn't fully sink in until after a few experiences, but this is when I first was really exposed to the whole concept of people being people. Rob was able to. I'm not going to say I know for sure what Rob believes in, but I know he definitely doesn't believe in God. He doesn't seem to believe in God anyway. But yet he was able to, in that, make people that do believe in God sound very intelligent, down to earth. Someone believes something different, not necessarily what he agrees with, but something he. But it doesn't. He was able to overcome his biases, if any biases he may have had. And the lesson I got from that a long time ago is, I do believe in God. And first off, it's nice to actually see any book, represent believers, non-believers, whatever the case may be, as intelligent people and not one-dimensional. And that's something I think I look at American media especially, and it's really easy to fall into the trap of, you got this born-again, conservative, down-to-earth, and that's not it at all. There's lots of people that have belief in God or in some form or fashion, and they express it in ways that may not be the norm, but that's how they express it. But the lesson I want to get to is that people are people. It was the first time I really looked at people that didn't believe in God, and again, not one-dimensional. It really didn't strike me fully until I actually lived in a Mormon community for a while. Just seeing one lifestyle in such a dichotomy. When I came out of that, I got a great appreciation. It made me realize that you can't judge people because you may not understand where they're coming from. You don't have to understand where people are coming from to give them, the benefit of the doubt. They're not going to understand necessarily where you're coming from, and that's okay. We don't need to fully. It doesn't matter if I understand your point of view completely. I don't need to. The fact of the matter is, you're a human being just like I am, and that's really all that matters at the end of the day. I mean, as long as you're not hurting anybody, what do I care what you think, what you believe, what you do? It doesn't really, at the end of the day, matter to me all that much, right? And that's, like I said, I'm not going to say I completely got it when I read his book, but that's where I really started thinking in those terms. And I just want to thank Rob on the air before I go to the interview about this. But I encourage anyone to read any of Rob's books. His new one is coming out. We're going to talk about that, and I'll promote it properly at the end of the podcast. But I just kind of want to say these are my experiences with Robert Sawyer. And scary thing is, I looked at a Taste of Authors, and I'm doing a reading right before Rob does at Al's Next Books next week. Rob's launching his book, and I know he's going to kill it. But I got to be the lead-in for him, and I'm not going to lie, I'm a little nervous. But on a personal note for me, it's actually kind of cool. I'm going to be in a room with some really talented people, successful probably more successful than me at this point in their own right, and I'm in the room, able to promote my work and crafts with them. And I don't know, it just that kind of feels good, and it's a step in the right direction, and I just hope I don't stink up the joint. So a quick shout out to Randy McCharles for giving me the opportunity. All right, we're going to just go to my regular commercial at this point in time, and then we'll go right to the interview with Rob. Anyway, thanks for listening for the first 10 minutes, and we'll be right back for the interview. Tired of buying t-shirts, coffee cups, and other memorabilia that all podcasts seem to have? I sincerely hope not, because I'm jumping aboard this gravy train right now. That's right. You can be the proud owner of a Just Joshing t-shirt, photographic print, and coffee cup at my Redbubble store. Redbubble has one-click ordering and will ship anywhere in North America. Check out http://worldwideweb.redbubble.com/people/jpenteloresco for more details.
If you want.
Yeah, sure. Let's see how this goes. Alright, I'm with Rob Sawyer. His credentials speak for themselves. So how are you doing today, Rob?
I'm fine, thank you, Joshua. How are you?
Scared, but I'll do my best.
All right, I got faith in you.
Yeah,
Let's
it
do
is.
this.
All right. Let's start with, personally, one of the things I've noticed with your books in particular, you do a lot with the concept of consciousness. Yes, that is a big thing, big theme in your books, I should say, at the very, very least. So what fascinates you about consciousness?
You know, I did a minor at Ryerson University in psychology, and I started in the late 70s and finished in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody mentioned the word consciousness in any of my psychology courses. We were coming off of the age of B.F. Skinner and behaviorism, the notion that human beings were simply black boxes. You put in the right stimulus, which could either be a positive or a negative,
mm-hmm.
and you get the right behavior out. And it was considered flaky and unscientific because consciousness is introspective. How can you put it in a lab? How can you study it? And as the decades have gone on, that has changed. Not just psychologists, but neuroscientists. We now have functional magnetic resonance imaging. We can see consciousness in action.
Yes.
We have models of consciousness with neural nets and other things in computer science and artificial intelligence. So and we have people like Roger Penrose, who's a great physicist, collaborator of Stephen Hawking, saying, I think there's some quantum mechanical things going on in consciousness. We had what had been something that was kind of, you couldn't even talk about it in a scientific sense, becoming this great confluence of a variety of sciences: neuroscience, artificial intelligence, computer science, evolutionary psychology, quantum physics. Mm-hmm. What a great playground for a science fiction writer where you can bring all those areas together under one topic. That's why I keep going back to it.
Actually, I have a good question for you, just something that came to mind. With the way things are going, because I was doing a Comic-Con in Phoenix.
Yes, and that's a wonderful con.
It's fantastic. It was my first con when I used to live there. Cool thing was, right beside me there was a television show, and they had a 3D printer that was constantly a thing. And the cool thing about, I've noticed about technology and everything, whether it's food, whether it's like machinery, whether it's like, we're not getting bigger, we're getting smaller.
Yes.
We're going on a deeper level. So one of the things I'm looking at the next 20, 30 years is we're going to re-ask the question of what is alive. So my question to you, how do you define life?
Well, you know, there are definitions they give you in biology class, and life is, it's actually interesting. There are all kinds of definitions for it.
Yeah.
But obviously, one of the key things for life has always been self-replication, which is very interesting because computers and artificial intelligences might conceivably have the ability to make copies of themselves, but they may not have an imperative the way we do. We're genetically driven to reproduce.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting question when we talk about artificial life. Do we actually include things like a computer system like, say, HAL 9000 in 2001, who had no particular desire to find a mate, no particular desire to reproduce, thought that he was going to live forever. If that's the defining characteristic, replication, reproduction, we may find that we aren't really interested in life any more than we're interested in, trivial phenomenon. What we're interested in is consciousness. What we're interested in is not whether something reproduces is irritable in the biological sense, meaning it responds to external stimulus, that doesn't seem all that interesting. It's just elaborate chemistry, life in that sense. But something that actually is self-aware, has an inner conceptualization of not just itself, but also its view of reality in the world, is very interesting, and might not necessarily be life, but would still be consciousness. And I think that's what we're really looking for, sibling sentiences that we can share the universe with.
Because like I said, I do my own research. I think every writer does. It just seems to me it's like we're going to be re-asking these questions a lot more in the next 10, 20, 30 years, because it's, again, smaller levels. We're looking at even with computers, they have this evolutionary program that they're almost like it replicated itself.
Yes. Yes. Sure.
Yeah. And it's neat because and now we got phones and even with human beings, how we look and are in terms of gender and things, it's all changing and evolving.
That's right. That's
right now underneath us, and it's really interesting. I was talking to an author friend and talking about how her kids are dealing with gender identity. When I was a kid, that never was.
No, you either were male or you were female. Done.
Yeah, done.
Over.
And now it's like if I have kids someday, I'm gonna be like, I have no idea what to tell my kid on that.
No. Well, what you tell them, I mean, we're learning very rapidly, and it's, with Bruce Jenner transitioning to being Caitlyn Jenner has brought a lot of public attention to this. But what we've learned very rapidly is that all kinds of things are internalized and subjective. We already accepted that consciousness, that we're actually, you and I are talking right now in a very bland room, but there's a blue recycling bucket. Is my perception of blue the same as your perception of blue? There's no way to determine that, right? It's all subjective. We both, well, it looks like the sky, it looks like your blue jeans, but what I see as blue, you might see as red. Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
It's subjective. Well, we accept that and some abstract quantities, like what do you perceive that color to be? And we're coming to realize that a lot of more concrete quantities, like what we thought of as gender, ethnicity, and so forth, are also things that are subject to subjective evaluation. If a person says, you know what, I don't care what my genetics say, I don't care if I've got an X chromosome, two X's or an X and a Y, I feel male or I feel female, we're coming to realize, okay, that's just as valid as saying I perceive these other qualia, I perceive these other parts of reality subjectively. And we go along with it. We say, well, you're the owner of your experience. It's not for me to impose upon you identity. You tell me your identity is this and that. I have to, as a respectful fellow traveler on this ball of dust, accept whatever you want.
Which is really, it's just such an interesting time. And are you fascinated with the 3D printers or where that's possible?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I want to get one. Me too. I collect plastic dinosaurs with the one criterion being that they be accurate at the time they were made, because our visions of paleontological reconstruction change all the time. And also action figures and things related to mostly 1960s and 70s science fiction TV and film properties, like 2001: A Space Odyssey, like Planet of the Apes, the original. And there's going to be a renaissance in people doing, uploading the plans of something or a scan of something and everybody printing them in their homes, and I can't wait for that. Right now it's a fairly tedious, slow process, 3D printing, and it's a fairly expensive process. The material cost is high per unit produced, but it's coming way, way down.
Oh no, I know. He printed like there's like these little clay figurines. He made like 3. I mean, granted, it was an 8-hour process.
That's
but
right.
Still, just watching it go together like that, it's like, that's incredible. And then I know that something like that could be used in theory for healing properties too, because if we're going that small.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I ever need a new heart valve, they're going to 3D print it, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we're heading. And like I said, it's just such a neat, I almost feel like we're in an interesting phase in like society, and in terms of, on the one hand, there's a lot of like upheaval going on. A lot of the old ways we've done things is just going completely out the window. But on the other hand, it's almost like there's this renaissance of different ideas of how to do things now, and it's really interesting to see what will come of this in the next 10, 20 years.
I was a speaker at Idea City, which is a TED-like conference in Toronto. I guess it was the year before last. I've spoken there several times, but they had the guy, and forgive me, I don't remember his name, who had uploaded to the internet the 3D file for printing a handgun on a 3D printer, which he put out there to the world. And people said, well, what the hell are you doing, right? And he said, well, I'm driving a dialogue here about the fact that we talk about background checks and all of that. You are so last millennium when you're thinking that somehow you can control at source access to any material object. You can't. Anybody who wants to can make anything they want to in their home right now.
Yeah.
And that completely changes our perception of supply and demand, of reality, of economics, and of personal safety and liberty.
Well, yeah, well, okay, just on that, on the manufacturing concept, I work at a mail company, Pure Later Carriers,
Sure.
my day job. They're, like, I looked at a 3D printer, and I'm like, you know, my whole system is obsolete. Right?
Yes.
Right now, it's completely obsolete. Probably, I figure 10 years, probably to completely initiate, and then my job, as I know it, will be gone. I'll have a scanner,
Yeah.
maybe an iPad-like device
Yes.
of some kind, and when I want to ship something, I send the code to whatever I'm going to ship it to, and that will be
That'll be reproduced at the other end.
Yeah, because there's no need to
It's exactly right. I mean, we saw that with 2D documents with fax machines.
Yeah.
Right? You know, it used to be a lot of the courier business was, okay, I have to get this contract across town or across the country almost immediately. And now we went through this period where we fax them. Now, of course, we do them as PDFs. But we did that already with every 2D object. Very rarely does somebody say, you have to ship this contract across, right?
Yeah, and that's a lot of money today now, too.
Right. And now it'll happen with 3D objects the
Yeah.
same way. There will still be things that have to be physically shipped.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, okay, we got like 20 trailers in there. Like
Yeah.
right now, there might be 5.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
everybody is railing here in Canada and the States about attempts to cut back what the postal services do.
Yeah.
But they have to.
Yeah.
Because their principal business model, which is delivering pieces of paper the next day or the day after across a vast area, is non-tenable.
Yeah.
If we want there to be a postal service at all, we have to recognize that it has to be completely reconfigured. Because in the States, they get Saturday mail delivered. We haven't had that in Canada since the 60s. And ridiculous, right? It's untenable. Nobody needs to get a greeting card on Saturday.
No.
It's not worth millions of dollars of infrastructure to allow that to happen.
No, absolutely not. Although, like I said, living in the States, it is weird when you come back here, and you no longer have that option. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, everybody regrets when something disappears, but you
Yeah.
say, but you've gained all these other options.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
No.
But I can email it to you. Well, that's true, and I can have it.
Oh no,
in 2 seconds.
Well, that's why I don't like.
And for free instead of whatever U.S. stamp costs these days.
My grandmother lives in Detroit, and she always complains about me not writing letters every once in a while because she still does the old-fashioned. But the thing is, I email people all the time.
That's right.
And it's just the medium has changed.
That's right. Absolutely.
But it's the same idea. So let's talk about something else real quick here. I read about you talk about science fiction, and this is just strictly speaking as a small guy looking. I think the science fiction is like the short fiction market. I think they need to change their model and how they actually deliver some things. One thing I like is Beneath the Sky, so they do a monthly delivery thing. But I think personally, what they should be doing, or what a lot of the short fiction magazines should be working towards, is the phone. Because that's our primary medium today.
Right.
I jokingly call it a tricorder, but that's not that far from the truth anymore.
That's true.
Right. But the thing is, I'm looking at the whole idea, because I did a magazine course in the States, and I looked at, and I was just thinking, well, if I'm going to do anything online, or if I'm going to do anything with communication, I want to target this.
Yeah.
So, because that just makes all the sense in the world, because everybody uses it.
Right.
So for me, and I know it's maybe not tenable just yet, but I'm looking like if I ever decide to do something like a science fiction magazine, I want like a story delivered like every 2-3 days, and maybe when you do a magazine, it's the best stories of that year.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, there is a service called Daily Science Fiction that does deliver a story a day.
Yeah.
Here in Canada, On Spec was our leading science fiction magazine, founded in 1989, and they've just announced here in 2015. So after a very good run, right?
Yeah.
A quarter of a century of managing to do a print magazine, that they're going electronic.
Yeah.
Because that's where the readers are, and it eliminates 90% of the cost of doing a magazine was printing and shipping.
Yeah.
And dealing with the distributors. And all of that can be eliminated and still pay the authors well, and hopefully still make a little money for the publisher too.
Yeah.
So sure, it's a very much a transitional industry, which is why in my half of it, which is book publishing, we authors are pushing to get a bigger and bigger cut of ebooks through our
Yeah.
traditional publishers. Traditional publishers want to give you 25% of the net, that is what they get from Amazon or from Kobo or iBooks, and keep 75% for themselves. And we're saying, what are you doing that's worth 3 times what I'm doing when all you're doing is shipping photons?
Yes.
You know, yeah, I understood in the day when you had to print massive quantities because there was no such thing as print on demand, and you had to ship quantities in trucks to all the thousands of independent bookstores, but they're almost all gone. There's only one chain left in the States instead of 2. Borders went out of business. We have only one chain here in Canada. What are you doing to justify taking the lion's share of the money in the new economy?
Yeah.
David Hartwell, the editor-in-chief of Tor, not the editor-in-chief, senior editor at Tor, forgive me, Patrick, who is the editor-in-chief, senior editor at Tor, was saying at a conference last year, Tor had its best year ever. Well, that's astonishing to think that what should have been an old media company has just had its best year ever. And the answer is why it and every other big publisher is having such great times is every penny of cost savings that the electronic distribution system has made possible has been kept by the publishers, and none of it has flown through to the authors, who are the primary content creators. And these people
bizarre.
who stand in the middle will be disintermediated, will be eliminated from the process. So specifically because I think they've been so greedy.
Yeah.
So, oh wow, we don't have to print books anymore. Well, we'll keep all that money. Oh wow, we don't have to retypeset from an author's paper manuscripts. We'll keep all that money. And you know, the advances to authors and the royalty rates for authors have not gone up at all in the 25 years that I've been publishing novels. But the cost of bringing books to market has plummeted. So yes, it's at some point, I think there's going to be a revolution, a real revolution. We have people who are self-publishing now, and it's kind of a revolution. The real revolution was when Stephen King says, you know, guys, it's been fun, but I'm on my own from here on in. And when it's in the big name authors say, I'm not sure you guys in the middle there are bringing anything to the table.
I think that's coming actually sooner and later because
Yes, it is.
Because the thing is, I'm looking at, like, you're a brand. I mean, in one sense, you are a brand. I know almost exactly what I'm going to read when I read a Robert Sawyer book.
Right.
I know it. Like, I know who you are. I know what you do, and it's very clear. And I know why I should care, which is the biggest three things from like a marketing point of view. Stephen King's the same way.
Yes.
J.K. Rowling's the same way. I mean, like. But I mean, and everybody. So at some point, I could actually, in theory, see it. Like you might go, you know what? As an experiment, I'll try this. Like a cereal of some kind up the road. I could just, again, it's just my thinking. But I don't know which one of you guys are going to take the move. Actually, there's a wonderful question here. How has Amazon impacted you guys?
Well, it has been both a positive and a negative. The reason we alluded a few minutes ago to the disappearance of so many independent bookstores is that Amazon is playing a very long-term game, right? Amazon started in 1995. Okay, so just had its 20th anniversary. Interesting. Did you see a lot of promotion for her 20th birthday?
Nope.
It was the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
No, and you know why? Because everyone would say, you've been in business 20 years and you still don't make a profit? Right? That's Wall Street would say, what the F with that? The answer is, Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, said, yeah, but in 40 years, we'll own everything. You just follow it. You just let us lose money year out, which is what they do. So when Amazon sells a book at less than what they paid the publisher for it, taking a loss per unit, which they do a lot, it means that no independent bookstore can match that price.
They're Walmarting the industry.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that they've managed to eliminate most of the independents, and one of the 2 chains, Borders, is gone, right? So what they've done is they're moving towards a place where there is a single seller of books, which gives them an enormous amount of clout. And ironically, at least in the ebook field, they've been very generous, where they say, we'll take 30%, which is less than a bookstore takes. You go to Chapters here.
It's 45.
50. Yeah,
it's in that ballpark.
Well, most bookstores it's 45, and
Yeah.
Chapters, with its clout here in Canada, insists on 50, right, from the publisher. So Amazon doesn't do that. Amazon doesn't say, we own the ebook market, which we do. 95% of all ebook sales is Kindle. They don't say, so we'll take 95% and give you a nickel on every dollar. They don't. They say, here's 70 cents on every dollar you can keep. So in that sense, they've created an economically sustainable model of publishing from an author's point of view. Authors have never heard of royalty rates of 70%. You know, hardcover royalty rate is 10%. Mass market paperback royalty rate for a beginning author is 6%. So, you know, in that sense, they've created this whole marketplace, but they've done it by destroying, with great, deliberate, targeted maneuvers, the traditional marketplace. I have to be ambivalent at best about that.
Yeah, which is fair. Because again, they've cut out, the one thing they've done is they cut out all the middlemen, like with what they've done, which is a good and bad thing. Right?
Well, what they say about traditional bookstores now is that they have become the showrooms for Amazon. Because people do this thing, they go in, they browse the book, they read the back cover, they sit in the Starbucks adjacent to the bookstore and read a chapter or two, and then buy it from Amazon. And that, of course, is horrifically parasitic of Amazon. These are mom and pop shops or established chains that you know, pay their employees well and pay their health care, well, not well, but pay their health insurance for their executives at least.
Yes.
And they're being reduced to having a parasite sucking the money out, and that's not right. I don't, you know, as an author, I don't pirate books, I don't pirate movies, I don't do any piracy, I don't go into a bookstore. If I see a book in a bookstore, if that's where I learned about it, that store gets the money from me, even if I have to pay full cover price. There never used to be anything but full cover price. If my book said $24.99 on the hardcover, you weren't shopping around for a cheaper place to buy it. That was it, everywhere, $24.99. You buy it, you know, and so you buy it from your local mom and pop shop. Now, you're an idiot. $24.99 here when it's $16.95 on Amazon. You know, what other business do you go in and give $8 of charity on every transaction to?
No, it's just a fair point. Although, like I say, you go to the chapters now. Like, the biggest thing I've noticed in the last 2-3 years, even with chapters, their book section's shrinking.
Unbelievable! It's like a puddle in the noonday sun. It's just evaporating.
I get to. I mean, they're trying. Like, I see it with some stores. Like, they'll try to keep the books nice and spaced and stuff like that. But you're looking around. I mean, I like seeing board games and stuff like that.
But here's the bottom line.
Yeah.
We were talking about Chapters insists on a 50% discount in most cases on books. You would think they're making money hand over fist on books. The reality is, on all that other crap, they make even more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so that's why that other crap is there. Why, you know, that Chapters is selling lifestyle stuff and paper products and desk sets, because the markup is even more than 50% on that.
Well, which again, and it strictly says a business sense, I understand. What's going to happen, this is what I think is going to happen in the next 3-4 years, the big chapter change will be gone. But they might go to a smaller store, more intimate store, because I think most of my favorite bookstores now, they usually come with an experience. Amazon, the one thing Amazon cannot compete with a bookstore is creating a unique experience, because there's nothing. You type a bunch of things on the computer, and you do that all the time, right? Whereas if you go to a bookstore, you okay?
Yeah. I left something in the other room, but no. It just made me think of it. Go ahead.
No,
don't want to ruin your podcast.
No, it's okay.
I'll get it later. Nobody's going to steal it.
Yeah. No, the thing of it is, I look at it like 2-3 years. Like, what they'll do is they'll have to remodel the store to something small, intimate, creating an experience. Because Amazon can't do that. And I think any of those kind of bookstores that are still there, I think they might survive, only simply because you can't get that on Amazon.
Yes. But now they have to get very serious about their employees, right? Because right now, most of the bookseller employees at Chapters are people who have retail experience but are not necessarily book lovers. It used to be that they were very good about getting people who could hand sell and give you advice. You know, you like Rob Sawyer? Give Robert Charles Wilson a try. And they don't have those people. The last Chapters I was in, and as much as I love Chapters, and they're very good to me in terms of buying a lot of books, you know, alphabetically, the next author along the list after me is John Scalzi, S-A-W-S-C-A, so we're shelf buddies. All mixed up. My hunk of shelf, all the titles out of order, some of John shoved in the middle of mine, some of mine at the other side of John, some of John to the left of me instead of the right of me, and this is their only job. If they're not going to hand sell books, if they're not going to know the content, the single thing they have to do is put books in alphabetical order, first by author and then by title with an author. A chimp could do that. And you go into many of these shops, many of the Chapters and Barnes and Nobles, and you think, they haven't even got a chimp working here. There's nobody here looking after this. It's a mess. And what we need is, it's become this buzzword, and I hate to even use that, but curated sections, where somebody actually, because what does a curator do? A curator is the guy in the museum who takes very good care of the collection and presents it in the best possible light. We use curated as a buzzword these days, but that's what it means. We need curated bookstores. Doesn't have to have every title. You'll never beat the 7 million titles that Amazon can ship you. You'll never have them in a physical store. So have well-selected titles, well presented, with somebody who can say to you, oh, you like so-and-so, try this. You're interested in this. I was just interested recently in researching Alan Oppenheimer and not Alan Oppenheimer, he's a voice actor, Robert Oppenheimer. Robert Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project. Could I go into my local chapters and say which one of these books on the Manhattan Project is the best one? No, I had to go on Facebook and ask my friends, and oh yeah, you should read this one, you should read that one. They need to have that expert advice in store if they're going to compete. The reason Amazon bought Goodreads, which they own 100%, is so that there would be this advice community available to drive traffic to Amazon.
And it's actually really brilliant, because what you've done also now is they'll do all the work for you.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. They crowdsource it, and anybody who, and they did that with their user reviews on site. Anybody who can generate content, as you are right now, getting a free interview with me, and no cost to yourself. That's the solid internet business model. Where do I get content that I don't have to pay for? Boom. And Amazon has been brilliant about that. I mean, they paid a fortune to acquire Goodreads, but in the long run, the user-generated content in Goodreads is a fortune. Way more money.
It's pennies in the bucket for them in the long run, because I'm on Goodreads, and again, if I want to find an author, I want to find you, Scalzi, Wilson, McDivitt. I mean, it goes from one to the other.
That's right. And this is exactly it. That's right.
Yeah, and that's just brilliant, right? No, I actually agree with that. Although I have not, fortunately, seen a chapters where I've seen that out of order thing. That would be weird.
It's my local chapters in Mississauga, if anybody's listening. Square one. Get somebody in there to put that stuff in proper order.
Nice. I last time I was in Toronto, I saw they had a decent one. What the hell was it? Frankly, anyways, that's another story altogether. But no, let's see here. One last one we have to talk about. You're a big Trek fan.
Huge.
Yes.
Original Star Trek.
Oh, okay.
I watched, there were 79 original Trek episodes. I've seen them all at least a dozen times. The original 6 movies, there's some good ones, there's some less good ones. I love them. I watched all of Next Generation, 175 episodes. I was getting my fill by that point. And this, I know a lot of people love Next Gen more than TOS. That's fine. Those first 2 seasons of Next Gen, the first one in particular, is almost unwatchably bad. I watched about half of DS9, about a quarter of Voyager, and 1 season of Enterprise. And Enterprise only had 4 seasons, so that's the one I've seen the least of. I get less and less interested. The original Star Trek was different qualitatively from the subsequent shows. It was an anthology series that happened to have standing sets and continuing characters. But one episode was as different from the next as night and day. Trouble with Tribbles and City on the Edge of Forever are completely unlike each other, and those two are completely unlike Mirror Mirror, which is completely unlike The Doomsday Machine, which is completely unlike Arena. You can recognize episodes in one frame. They're so different one to the next. Deep Space Nine with the long Dominion War arc, Enterprise with the Xindi War arc, it became, I don't know which episode this is, and I don't care so much about the ongoing arc. The other thing that got lost almost completely was any kind of social comment. And that's what the core of the original Star Trek
I actually think that's what old school, like, I call science fiction up into, especially like 60s, 70s, 80s. There's stuff, I love that old stuff in particular because I love the social commentary, because they weren't just talking about the idea of the technology, they're talking about the actual consequences, good and bad. And really good science fiction either had 2 really good choices, and you could go one, or 2 really bad choices.
Yes.
And that's the stuff I really enjoy. Like, I love Asimov. I love, like, his whole concept of robots and stuff like that, especially the short stories were amazing. I loved Highland up until the 60s.
He became a different writer.
No, very, The Stranger in a Strange Lands, the magical.
That's the borderline.
Yeah, that's the borderline, right? So, but you go back to his older stuff, again, commentaries about war, and things like some of that stuff is brilliant.
And brilliant. I don't agree with anything Heinlein ever had to say about war, but he was saying it.
Yeah.
He was making a statement. And that's what I loved about science fiction. You know, not to brag, but I'm lucky enough to have the distinction. My Chinese publisher flew me off to Chengdu to give me an award as the most popular foreign science fiction writer in China. Now, why would that be? Why would that be? The reason is that I still do all kinds of social commentary. Science fiction is always popular in repressive regimes. They understand, more than we do in a free environment like Canada or the United States, that there are things that they're not allowed to talk about directly. So they talk about them obliquely with masks and disguises through science fiction. My fiction still does a lot of social commentary. It isn't the fungible, interchangeable space opera that's so popular in mass market paperback science fiction. And they understand, even if the issues I'm talking about aren't necessarily issues that resonate particularly with the modern day Chinese individual, they understand that this is science fiction as it's meant to be. As H.G. Wells, who wasn't talking about time travel, but was talking about class distinctions, who wasn't talking about a Martian invasion, but was talking about British colonialism. They understand what science fiction is in China, and still in the former Soviet Union, where it's very popular as a way of saying things about Vladimir Putin that couldn't be said directly naming him.
Absolutely. I'm going to give you a compliment.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Okay. You're the closest thing to Asimov today I read.
You know, you're very kind to say that. I must say, one of the compliments that I take very, very dear to my heart is I got to meet Robin Asimov, who's Isaac's daughter.
Oh, wow.
Some years ago, and she read some of my books, and she sent me an email that said, "Now I understand why you're so often compared to my dad."
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, holy cow, Robin, thank you. Thank you, Robin, if you're listening.
I mean, no, straight up, honestly, I read your stuff, it's like, this is like, if I, and I'll go back to like some of the older Foundation stuff,
Yeah.
and some of that stuff, and I'm reading your stuff, it's like, you're not quite talking about the same things, but you have almost the same mindset, if that makes sense.
I'll tell you, the greatest thing that happened to me is my development as a writer.
Yeah.
I was so lucky. In the summer of 1985, I'm 25 years old, and the CBC handed me some money and said, go to New York and interview science fiction writers. I interviewed Isaac Asimov in his home, in his penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, Samuel R. Delany, Thomas M. Dish, all the editors down there at the time, Stanley Schmidt, who was editing Analog, Gardner Dozois was editing Asimov's, and tons of other great authors down there, and also did a lot of interviews in Canada. But these guys, at the beginning of my career, Asimov said, well, let me tell you. And he told me what he thought constituted a good story and why he was doing it and what he strove for. And I remember, I always quote this, he always said, as long as I can make myself and my readers happy in that order, I am content. And I thought about that. That's right. Don't follow the market, which is what so many of beginning writers, I'm 25, beginning writer, so many do. Well, what's hot today? Should I be writing zombies? Should I be writing urban fan? What will sell? Asimov never had that thought in his head. He said, I want to write this. I'm going to do it so well that the readers will be content with it, but I'm going to follow my own path. And I learned that from the grandest of the grandmasters.
No, because even his nonfiction, I still remember I had a collection called The Edge of Tomorrow.
Yes, I had that collection, sure.
Yeah, I still remember Euclid's Fifth.
Yes.
I still remember that because he made it. I mean, that dude was good. Like, there's no doubt. But I mean, it was relatable. His stuff was relatable. You could get where he was coming from, and he didn't go out of his way to bog. He didn't bog anything down.
No.
It was really concise. His clarity was phenomenal.
The clarity is the thing. There's so many people who try to teach subjects that they really don't understand themselves. And so they make it, well, that's a hard question to answer. No, there are no hard questions to answer if you know your topic.
Yeah.
And whatever the topic was, Asimov knew it. And, you could ask him, well, 'cause I remember, this isn't a story about Asimov, but somebody I knew was going for a PhD in physics. And he comes to his doctoral defense. And the question was, one of the examiners looks at the thesis, that's science, says, why is the sky blue? And the guy would say, well, it's refraction of light, and da da da. And why is that? And why is that? And why is that? And why is that? And he just asked him every follow-up question. The guy was able to answer them. And at the end he said, you, sir, are a physicist, and now you are a doctor physicist, right? Because he knew everything. Not just his narrow little thing, and not to quote somebody else, well, it says so-and-so. No, do you understand this? Totally and completely. And it was clear in every bit of nonfiction that Asimov wrote that he totally and completely understood what he was talking about. And so you should be able to explain quantum physics to your 9-year-old son,
Mm-hmm.
right? You should be able to if you really understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. Not that he did have a 9-year-old son for exactly 1 year, and then he had a 10-year-old son, and
Yeah,
an 11-year-old
yeah,
son.
exactly.
Right? His son's name is David, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's just really cool. Let's see, a couple other things. Can you talk? But this is not going to come out till like what, March.
That's
Like,
okay.
No,
I'm hoping you'll hold it till near the release.
No. You have my word. I will. So I guess we'll do this now. Give me a concise from your next book. Talk about
Sure.
it.
My next book is called Quantum Night, and N-I-G-H-T, as in After Dark, and it is about the discovery that human consciousness comes in 3 distinct flavors. There's a basic level of functioning, then there's an awareness, a self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's there's a group that just has basic functioning with no self-awareness, a group that has self-awareness, and then in a group that reflects on its own self-awareness and has that thing that we call conscience in addition to consciousness. So the middle group that is self-aware but has no really thinking about the consequences of it, we call those psychopaths in society. They may not all be serial killers. They may be corporate raiders or bankers
sociopaths or something.
or whatever. They're
Yeah.
people who are doing only out for themselves. And the conceit of the novel is a quantum physics model of how consciousness works in the brain that divides us into these 3 cohorts. And the discovery by 2 people, one a psychologist and the other a quantum physicist, that the successively smaller cohorts exist, and the realization that the world is very much on the brink of coming to an end because of all the psychopaths, like Vladimir Putin, to mention somebody we mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
who are in positions of power. And whether something can be done, here's a fundamental science fictional question, and it's in the first chapter. One of the characters, a student, says, well, you can't change human nature. This is a novel, it's an exploration of, well, maybe you can. Is there a way to actually change human nature? And that's what it explores.
Now I gotta ask you a follow-up. If you change the nature, is it still human?
Aha! That's an interesting question. We have this discussion about whether Homo sapiens is the right name for what we are,
Yeah.
and whether it always will be the name for what we are. That actually is addressed in the novel. I'm not going to tell you
No.
the novel's answer,
No,
but
no.
absolutely.
No.
What defines Homo sapiens?
Yeah.
What defines us? And, will we be human if we change our fundamental psychology? Will we be Homo sapiens when, I start out, we mentioned a heart valve. I don't have one, but an artificial one, but I might get one. I might get an implant for Parkinson's at some point. I already wear prosthetic optical enhancers. I call them eyeglasses.
Yes.
Once more than 50% of me, artificial knee, whatever, insulin pump, you name it, is not the stuff that I got genetically from my mom and my dad, am I still human at that point?
Mm-hmm.
We got to face these questions. Science fiction is the literature in which we address them. That's why I'm proud to be part of it.
Yes. Well, I gotta say, it really was a
Joshua,
pleasure.
my pleasure. Good questions and a nice back and forth. I enjoyed it very much.
Well, yeah, I've done this a few times. So hold on here.
So that was my interview with Robert J. Sawyer, and I enjoyed it. I actually, listening to this pot again, it just reminded me, like, smart dude, and, very nice. He was really a pleasure to actually have that conversation with him, and maybe at some point down the road, maybe I'll get another chance to do that again with him. So, Rob, if you're listening to this, thank you very much. His book is Quantum Night. It's out, I want to say right now, but it will definitely be out by next week for sure. Actually, no, I know for sure it is out right now. So Quantum Night is available. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at your local bookstore. And since we were talking about our traditional publishing models, check out some of the independent bookstores that are still out there. Rob's going to be doing in Calgary 2 signings. He's going to be at L's Next Books on March 10th. I'm actually going to be the act right before him. Maybe the act's the wrong word. I'm going to be doing a reading from my bookstore in Bannister right before he shows up. Like I said, I'm trying not to trying not to stink up the joint while I'm getting ready for him. But he's also doing another signing on the 11th at Pages in the Kensington area in Calgary. I encourage you to go meet him. He's a wonderful human being and definitely a pleasure. And like I said, he does good books. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping that when I see him on that Thursday, he'll deface mine with his autograph. But we'll see how that goes. Yeah, like I said, I did my best to keep it formal because, like I said, I don't know him that well. And also, like I said, he's achieved a lot in science fiction, and not just not just for what he's done in sales, not just for his Hugo and Nebula Awards. Rob Sawyer is one of those guys that if it wasn't really for him, there wouldn't be anything in Canadian fiction at all. He has pioneered fiction, especially science fiction, since probably for as long as he's been successful. And guys like me would never have the opportunity to go to some of these events. There would probably be no When Worlds Collide. There probably would be Tesseracts would not exist as we know it today without Rob. And he does not get enough credit as far as I'm concerned for that. So I'm going to just end the podcast on this. Rob, thank you very, very much for everything you've done in fiction. I wish you continued success. You deserve it. And I hope I get to work with you. Well, not work with you. Forever. Hope I get to see you somewhere down the line. Thank you. And that'll do it for this episode of Just Joshing. I hope you guys like it. Buy some merch. Buy one of my books if you want to support it. Beyond that, though, stay inspired and keep following your dreams. You never know where you'll go.